Hi, I'm Stephanie Roach. As Esperanza said, I am a parent consultant with the Utah Parents Center. I'm very excited to be here tonight. And Elise Merrill and I are facilitating this session. So our session is not very long tonight, and it's going to end before we know it. So I am going to give our presenters a 10-minute warning when they've got 10 minutes left to wrap things up for this presentation. And then after that, we will have another few minutes to ask questions and to announce prizes and also to fill out the poll. So we ask that you would put any questions that you have in the chat or in the Q&A box, and then we'll get to as many as we can. And if we're not able to finish all of the questions before the end of the presentation, we will work on compiling those questions and getting some answers sent out to all of the participants. So with no further ado, I will turn the time over to Elise Merrill, and she will introduce our wonderful co-presenters, and we will get this presentation started.
Hey, I too would like to extend a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. My name is Elise Merrill, and I am also a parent consultant with the Utah Parents Center. It is my pleasure to introduce our speakers for this next hour. Ashlie Baker has been a parent consultant for the Utah Parents Center for over 10 years, and her career has also included 3 years as a service coordinator for early intervention at Kids on the Move. Her family joined the world of disabilities when her triplets were born at 24 weeks gestation over 17 years ago. One of her 4 children has multiple disabilities, including ADD, Tourette syndrome, autism, a rare eye disorder called PHPV, and Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. Ashlie is also a sister to a young man on the spectrum. Ashlie takes pride in her work serving parents who have children with disabilities and helping them find the resources that they need to be successful in education and in life. Ashlie has presented workshops and classes across the state of Utah and nationally. Her education includes studies at the University of Utah, majoring in psychology. Tonight, we will also hear from Deanne Shields. Not only is Deanne a mother and a grandmother, but she is also a teacher. Deanne earned a Bachelor of Science as well as a master's degree in education from Brigham Young University. She has a very important job. She currently teaches children with dyslexia how to read and makes a very positive impact on their lives. She has been on the board of the Learning Disabilities Association of Utah for 13 years since 2007. Ashlie and Deanne, thank you for addressing us tonight. I think I could speak for all of us and that we are all really eager to hear what you have to say on this important topic of school supports under COVID-19.
Thank you so much for those introductions. I mean, it's such an honor to be here tonight and to be able to talk to you guys. And it's an honor for me to be able to co-present with Deanne. She is a great mentor to me as I have utilized her services throughout the years for my son, and a lot of the support she's going to be talking about today, I have implemented not only with my son with a disability, but with all my children. So a lot of these things are effective for all children, which is pretty awesome. Here is a fun picture of my family. As you can see, I'm boy trapped. Unfortunately, I need a little bit of girl power besides myself over here, but I have a very blessed life, and I'm just really happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Deanne, and I'm excited to present with Ashlie because she's been teaching me a lot the last few weeks. And I'm I guess the balancing force in nature because I have lots of daughters. And so glad to be here and to share some of our resources that we've been gathering. Hopefully they'll be helpful for everybody.
So here are the topics we want to cover tonight. And I just want to let you know that we could speak for 3 hours or longer on a lot of these subjects we're going to be going over, and we are on a limited time. So it is going to be a little bit more general. So if you've heard some of these before, that's okay. Hang tight. I promise you, you will learn something in this session. I have learned something already listening to the others throughout this conference. It's been really rewarding for me to hear from others, experts within our community. It's been really great. So what we're going to ask is if you can write some questions in the chat for us, and we're going to address those at the end so that we can get through all the content first. So please feel free to, if you want to wait to the end and put some questions up, but we would really love to hear what your thoughts are some things that we can help address. So topics, COVID and school guidelines, academic impact. I'm going to minimize my bar here. School communication, student needs, tips and examples. This is going to be my favorite part to see Deanne do to help us all be able to support our students. And also final tips to empower your student and final tips for parents. So we're going to start with this: choices and worries, what the Department of Education has to say, and also some exposure guidelines that we've all been living. So let's talk a little bit about these choices and worries. So as we all know, last year we had that soft school closure experience, and many families struggled with this experience, and it was difficult. Not only because it was difficult because maybe we weren't getting communication from the school, or we were getting different information from teacher to teacher. Every family had a different experience. Even LEA to LEA had different varying experiences as to what they were doing and instructing their students during that time. So a lot of families called that school year done. And honestly, I can tell you from a personal experience, it was difficult for me. I have 4 boys. One is in college, but the 3 that I have, they're in the high school and middle school ages. So we were dealing with a lot of teachers at this point, and that was not only hard for me as a parent, but getting like a million emails became very overwhelming to me. And that was my done experience is, oh dear, what email should I read or shouldn't I read? There were risks, right, involved. When it came time to decide what we were going to do with this coming school year, a lot of families struggled to make that choice. And I know maybe some parents feel that the choice that they made maybe wasn't the best fit for their child, but there's no wrong answer or no wrong experience. We can learn from each other, and we can learn from our kids, especially to see what kind of needs and supports are necessary for them. Some questions that were asked are, what precautions will be taken, or how can we turn to school safely? And we're in it, right? A lot of us have our kids either learning from home virtually, or they're in person in school. And speaking for my situation, we actually are not going to have our school shutting down again next week because the numbers are so high. So even sending my children to school, making that choice moving forward, we still have to figure things out as things are changing from week to week and day to day, depending on what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about some mask concerns. Some of the things that we have been hearing from some parents are, what, how is my child going to continue to keep that mask on all through the day? And I know that a lot of us have had to navigate this already this far into this school year. But, sometimes those challenges can change. For instance, I've heard from some parents that their child is, really anxious. Their anxiety has amped up, or, some of their worry, what they see on media has affected them. And they even having that mask, going to school, or they're worried about the exposure. They're worried about the social distancing going from class to class. And from my own children's experience, the halls can be crowded, depending on what the school has decided to do in terms of that social distancing. And there are some definite things that we can do to help support and navigate the concerns of our student to help them feel safe. Let's talk a little bit about like the public health order. And, it's stated that any student that is on property in school or on a school bus must wear a face mask. And we do know that there are and still were going forward some exemptions that parents could discuss and with their teams, with IEP teams, Section 504 coordinators, to determine, is this student, are they able to wear a mask, or, what is the risk there? So let's talk a little bit about that. So some of the exemptions, let's see, a local education agency shall document the accommodation as part of the student's IEP or Section 504 accommodation plan. So there are exemptions, yes, but they have to be documented. We need to make sure that that is in place and on that plan. So a school may require an individual to provide a medical directive verifying the need for this exemption, and parents need to get this medical directive from their child's healthcare provider, stating that the child has a known medical or mental health condition or disability and can't wear that mask during that school time, and that they may need some other accommodations around this. So if there are not any current accommodations on file with the school already, please contact your school to find out what paperwork is needed if this is something that you feel needs to move further in terms of your student and that mask wearing. So should a school create a 504 plan with a student who obtains a medical exemption to the mask requirement? And the answer is no. The mask requirement and the medical directive for exemption are generally applicable admission requirements issued by the public health authorities. So that's just kind of a guideline there to look at. And this also goes for, does a student need that medical directive if he or she already has an IEP or 504 plan? And the medical exemption relates to the disability. And we just really need to be sure that if there is a medical directive already in place on the IEP, we know that that student has other health needs and risks that are already in place on there. However, if it's a student that has other measures that determine why the student needs to not wear that mask, that needs to be, written into the IEP or Section 504. So let's talk a little bit about what if a student, already has that exemption. Let's talk about the reasons why a student may need one. So there are a few exemptions for some students, and the answer to this is they're looking at medical conditions of the student, mental health, and disability. So in terms of we definitely need to be talking to our school to figure out, is this really something that we need to be looking at? But, your school may say, there are some measures that we want to try first to see if your student can wear a mask. And I don't want you as a parent to be afraid of that. Of course, it's a scary thing to hear, hey, you know what? We may not fully agree, but these are the reasons why. I would hope that we could listen and be open-minded to figure out the reasons behind that. The safety is a big concern, and I want you to know that your school has should have the best outlook for your child in terms of safety and their health measures. There are a lot of really great things we can do to help that student, either if it's anxiety, minimize that anxiety so that they can wear a mask even in public and go into a store, because it doesn't just stop there at school. So I just want you guys to kind of think outside the box a little bit, and if your student has a medical need that they cannot wear a mask or they cannot take that mask off, yes, we definitely, we need to go with what those healthcare providers are suggesting and what you as a parent know. But I also want you to think in terms of a student has the ability to learn how to do it through either modeling or through practice. I think that those are some things that can be looked at as well. So let's see, individual plan for each school district. Yes, so there are different plans that each district's going to be looking at in terms of some of the rules and how they're going to be gauging some of that education for your student. But the mask comes through public health. So those are the directives there. And I'm gonna have a link here in a minute that's gonna kind of talk a little bit about that. That is also available that you can click on from the resources that Stephanie so kindly talked about. So let's talk about the Department of Education here. What is the guidance in terms of education for our students? So basically the school needs to continue to instruct. So FAPE, which is a free and appropriate public education, is still expected for our students. So there are circumstances that may affect how the education and related services and supports will be provided. However, school districts must provide a free and appropriate public education. So like for instance, my kids are going off school next week, but that's virtual learning. All the students are going to be virtual learning. So that means that my son, who is on an IEP, still is going to be learning and still is entitled to FAPE and measures on his IEP and in order for him to be able to learn. So it doesn't stop there. If the whole school is if the whole school is doing that, then that includes our students with disabilities as well. So like I just said, instruction for all students, they must continue to support students with disabilities. And the instruction and accommodations will be implemented in different ways for our students from district to district or from charter to charter. So just because you hear that, you know, your sister's kids are going to another school and this is how it's handled, doesn't mean that that's going to be happening for your student. So keep that in mind, that we want to be able to think creatively, think outside the box, but also remember that our students still need to be educated. Let me take a little drink here. So special education and related services can be provided through distance instruction. It's been happening. This can be virtual. It could be by phone. There are a lot of different ways that we can help educate our students, okay? And if an LEA gives families the option to choose an in-person or distance learning option, that LEA may recommend that the student participate in, you know, the student with a disability to participate in the in-person option, but may not require it. I want you to consider that, because if they're offering it to all students, that same that in-person option that you choose as a parent, or that virtual learning that you choose as a parent, it is entitled to your student as well. The IEP team should consider the impact of that distance and remote learning and your student's ability to be able to access and make progress, including how a decreased day or week may not allow the LEA the same amount of time in which they typically would provide services. So that really needs to be looked at here. We as parents, we need to be a little bit flexible sometimes and realize, okay, the school is doing the best they can, but that doesn't mean the conversation needs to end there. We need to be able to talk with the school and be able to, you know, come up with an alternative if something isn't working. So here's that manual I was talking about. This is a really great manual that goes over school exposure guidelines, mask guidelines, and that link is provided. And like I said, what happens if my student's school shuts down temporarily due to high numbers? It's happening. You could definitely have a temporary distance remote learning plan, but I want you to know that this learning plan is not an IEP. And this is a temporary plan, okay? So if your school is willing to work with you in that remote distance education option for this short term, this is something you can ask your school if you feel it's necessary. Your school may be saying, hey, this is how we're going to be serving the needs of your student during this temporary time. So benefits and difficulties. Definitely, whether you chose to be in person for your student to be educated, or if you're doing virtual studies at home, each child can be different. One child can actually benefit in some ways where they may not benefit in another. I know a lot of parents that I have spoken to have benefited from their student who has been anxious or may have a hard time with social interactions. They may do better at home. But then are those social interactions going to change, once they go back to school? And, what are the supports that are going to be necessary once, if that decision is made moving forward? So think about all the things that when your child has been home, like in terms of parental access, do you know the curriculum that your child or children are supposed to be using, right? And do you as a parent have access or understand the platforms that are used to track the grades, missing assignments? Are you a working parent? Are you juggling your job? How many kids you have, or how are you juggling that? And I really love this picture of this little girl sitting on this mom's lap, because I almost have a joke with my son who is 17, and he said I could share this. He feels like that little girl. Like I would just want to put him on my lap and say, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? Have you done that? So our relationship has been affected having when he's home. It really has been challenging because he needs a lot of support to stay on task. And it's been kind of nice when he's at school and his educators can help support him, and it doesn't have to be me all through the day, because that really has been straining on a relationship. But we just need to really think about how we as a parent are with our children and what kind of access our kids need. Also, technology needs. There's a lot we need to think about. Can your student log in and navigate links? What does the internet access look like at your home? Is there Wi-Fi that's reliable? If that Wi-Fi shuts down, is your student going to shut down and say, oh, I'm done? Because I'm telling you right now, my kids would do that. Mom, it's just not working. I can't do my work today. Are there additional assistive technology needs that need to be provided for your student in a virtual setting? Software that's needed? How about what if your student doesn't have access to a computer? Are they doing their assignments and everything over a phone? I mean, there can be some limitations. Does your student require a more flexible schedule? And is that virtual setting working for them because they can do that work at any point because your school offers that? Or does your student, is everything recorded so that you can watch it with your students so that you can help them? I mean, there are a lot of benefits and difficulties we hear from both ends. So I just want you to know that just don't be afraid to try things with your student. If it doesn't work, you can meet and adjust to a different option. Okay, so school communication. I'm going to be really quick on this because I'm going to address this at the end as well. Talk with your teachers. It's very, very important. Things aren't working, reach out. You need to reach out. Don't wait till your student is melting down. If they're struggling at school or are struggling in the virtual setting, what is the best mode of communication for that teacher, and how frequent can you reach out to multiple teachers or just one teacher, right? Keep records, write down what it looks like, what's going on with your child, and write down the data of my child didn't finish this. I had to spend so much time with my student to help them to get through their work, or I had to log on with my student and I'm trying to work and my student isn't completing anything. We need to be reaching out and communicating. We also want to encourage our students to communicate and advocate. This is huge. If we start at a young age, our students are going to grow, right? Blink of an eye, I promise you. I don't know what ages everybody's kids are today on here, but I feel like it was just yesterday I was sending my little ones to kindergarten and they're juniors in high school. And I don't know how I got there, but I'm really grateful that I've pushed for my son to be able to advocate and communicate for himself, so that he's going to be able to do that as he grows and continues into life, even outside of high school. So I'm going to turn the time over to Deanne.
Hi. For the next little while, we're going to talk about maybe some things that you could try at home if you do end up in that home situation, but also things you can do if your child's in school when they get home to help them stay organized and keep everyone happy. Because I agree with Ashlie. I remember thinking that I don't want to be my son's teacher because it's too much work just being the mother to get his homework done. And some of these things that we've tried, and some of these things that Ashlie has used with her children too. So the first thing we're going to talk about is behavior. And there's just a lot of stressful things going on right now, and that can impact behavior. And every child and every one of us responds to that differently. We might shut down, we might get angry, we might get stressed and anxious, we might feel sick all the time. And so we want to look at how that behavior is impacting what's going on in our children's lives. And the other thing we just want you to know is it's okay to ask for help. If your child's struggling at home, you can reach out to the teacher, to the IEP team, to a pediatrician. We've also listed some resources attached to our handouts that we have given. So there's lots of different ways of identifying and recording feelings and emotions and responses. This one here is a thermometer that I found on a website called Social Emotional Workshop. And if you sign up, you can actually download it and some information for free. And it looks like it's got a lot of really good stuff. But I've seen these where they're just pictures of faces, you know, which one of these is how you feel right now? Or are you feeling good? Are you feeling bad? Are you feeling okay? Or it's a red light moment, a yellow or green light. So there's lots of different ways we can represent it, but I'm going to use this thermometer because it's really pretty commonly used. So the first thing we would do is we help the child identify what emotions they're struggling with. So in the case of this example, it's anger, but it could be fear, it could be stress, it could be anxiety. And so then we help them break that down into its different stages or its temperatures. If I was doing this with a small child, I would probably only have maybe 3 temperatures. I'm feeling really good, I'm starting to not feel good, and now I'm feeling really, really bad, or however they want to label those behaviors. And once we've labeled the behaviors, the next thing is to identify what they look like or how they make me feel when that's happening. Sometimes kids have a hard time not just labeling their behaviors, and even adults, but defining how we're feeling at that very moment. And then the next step is we want to design some interventions. If I'm feeling calm and happy, then that's all great. But if I start getting annoyed or frustrated or angry, I want to have some kind of intervention to bring my temperature down. Because once I hit the furious level, there's not very much that anyone's going to do with me until my temperature comes down and I can have good conversations or be more rational and calm and feel more safe and comfortable. And those kind of interventions, it's really good to ask the child. And this is easier with older kids if you have teens and kids in junior high and high school, it's going to be a little bit easier, and you're going to have to help younger kids maybe a little bit more, but even sometimes the older kids. But it could be, when I start feeling like this, I need to take 5 deep breaths and think about why it's upsetting me and calm down. And maybe that will take me from annoyed back to calm. Or maybe it's like I need to get extra help from the teacher when I'm feeling frustrated, or mom or dad or big brother and big sister. It could be something like I need to just take a break and get a drink or have a snack. Or it could be I just need to go for a walk, or I need to come back to this task later. And sometimes it's just getting the help that they need at that moment and the support. And every child, when they reach that top, is going to be different. And that's why I like to let the kids identify that emotion themselves, because the kid might feel furious, but they may label it completely different. They might say, well, this is when I start yelling, or this is when I blow up, or this is when I put my head down and I don't do anything anymore, or this is when I say I'm really, really sick and I need to leave. And so helping the children do that is a way of helping them identify their emotions, but creating an intervention to help us lower the temperature. I went to a presentation once and I looked to see who it was that I heard this from, but he talked about this, a roller coaster, and I know they use roller coasters also in emotional kinds of things. But he said, when we get to the top of the very highest hill, when that goes down, there's nothing we can really do until we get back down to the bottom. And there's so much energy, we're going to keep doing a few more hills afterwards. So if I can take that big, huge hill and I can do these interventions and make little tiny hills, then I don't have as much momentum. It's not as scary. It's easier to get down, and it maybe won't push me into some more emotions later. It makes me feel more in control. And there are experts that you can read about this, because I'm certainly not. This is just something that we've tried and has been effective. And I also try to explain to kids that it's okay if we have bad days, because we all have bad days. It's not a character flaw. It's just that there's a lot of things happening now, and we're going to have good ones and bad ones. And I think sometimes when kids know that the adults, parents, and the older people in their lives, their teachers, everyone has experienced different kind of emotions, then it doesn't make them feel so flawed or so out of control. The next thing is that we want to make sure we're checking in with the kids throughout the day. Ashlie said that when her kids would leave in the morning, she'd ask them what kind of day they were going to have. And I think that is just a wonderful example of a way to set the tone for the day. But check in at the end of the day too, and find out what went well and what they need help with. And it's always, how can I help you? What do you want me to do to help you? And then set all these expectations and discuss these things when everyone's feeling relaxed and happy, because when we're all really emotional, we're not always rational, and sometimes we make it worse. The next thing I want to talk about is some organizational things, because most of our kids struggle with organization. And so there's lots of different templates that you can use to make schedules, and you can make one yourself, but I'm going to give an example of a couple of experiences that I've had using these, and I'm going to try to be really, really quick. But I used one with my son, and we set up a calendar in 30-minute increments. And then we went and we wrote in all the things that were set times for that week. And then I let him go in and decide when he was going to do his homework. We separated into reading and math and whatever it was. And I said, you write them. You tell me where, and I'll write them in these squares, because you still have a lot of space left over. And his thing was, I want to do it right after I get home from school. And I said, well, don't you want to have a snack or a break? He's like, no, I want to get it done. I said, okay, but then we'll revisit it. If it's not working, you tell me and we'll redo it. Well, after about a week, he realized that was not the best schedule for him. And we sat down and we arranged it. I had a student once that divided her schedule into 5-minute increments, which I thought was just way over scheduling her life, but it's what she wanted to do. And then after she used it for a while, she also realized she could make adjustments. And I think it's a good skill to teach kids to organize and see also how much time they really have in their day that's free once they schedule these other things. The other thing, from my point of view as a mom, is that when my son got angry about his schedule, I could say, oh, I'm so sorry that you made your schedule this way. And it was hard for him to get mad at me because he made the schedule, and then we could sit down and discuss how to make that schedule better. You can find examples of picture schedules for younger kids. You could do schedules for different parts of their days to help them be organized. And we've put links to some places where you can get these templates and examples of schedules. Make sure to stay organized that you designate a place where you're going to have that study area be. Include times where you can check in with them or they can come and ask for help. Using alarms and timers, especially if you're doing homework. One thing that I've noticed, and I don't know why, but if it's an activity that you really, really like to do, have the timer count up because it feels like it's longer for some reason. If it's an activity that you don't like to do so much, have the timer count down. The alarms could be for breaks or even to prompt a kid to refocus. And then try to do the homework at the same time every day. Some kids, maybe a calendar or a schedule won't be enough, or they want to do things differently. And so the next thing we have is learning contracts. And so there's lots of different kinds of learning contracts you can use where you get together with your child. And I guess say this a lot of times, that I think having them put a lot of input in it helps to tie them into it and develop those skills and give them that responsibility. But here's some examples of learning contracts that you could do with your child.
Yeah, and there's 10 minutes left. I just wanted to let you know.
Thank you. The next slide talks about time management. And so for time management, we really, really want to make sure that we have that schedule somewhere, because that's why we set it up in the first place. And then we set a goal, we make a plan, and if it's a really big task, we break it into little ones. And also helping our student or child know, how much time do you think it's going to take to do this? Help them estimate and start gauging that. Post the study schedule, the clock, timer, everything that the child needs in an area where they're doing their homework. This is a great picture of Ashley's son, and he's using a process called Get Ready, Do, Done. And it's funny because we were talking, we both went to the same conference where we learned about this. And you can see he has this little board that's defined his study area. He's got the headphones to help him stay focused and block out all the other sounds. And I was telling Ashley, my daughter, even in college, they let her use headphones with music in because it decreased her stress. So it's finding out what works best for your child. But he has his timer there. On the whiteboard, it tells him what math problems he needs to do and what it's going to look like when he's done. And so it's a great program. And we also put links where you can find out more about that.
And the great thing about this too is he wrote all of this out. It isn't something I did. It's something that he is aware of. And he's 17 now. And yes, I still have to constantly prompt him. But if you could zoom in, it says things that he needs to do to make sure he has all the materials. And it's funny, he's like, my hands, my mouth. He doesn't say that anymore, but it's just funny how things progress, but they do. They have to be prepared, right? In any setting that they're in. Thanks for sharing that, Deanne. That's great.
It's just really such a good example of helping your child develop those skills. I made a comment earlier before we started that I answer the phones for the Learning Disabilities Association of Utah, and probably around 70% of the phone calls we get are from adults who are needing help. And we really want to start our children early, learning these habits and developing these skills. And even though sometimes they know how to do these things, they don't have the confidence that they're doing it right. And so practicing at home where it's safe is a good place to develop that confidence so that when they are adults, they know how to explain what they need, to tell people what their disability is, to organize themselves and know what works for them. So we really want to empower them. So here's some suggestions from a board member of mine on the Learning Disability Association on how to, some tips for your child when they're doing homework. So on the next slide, oh, sorry, there's a slide in between. These are some examples of kinds of break things that you can do.
Here?
Sorry, I forgot the slide was in the middle of it.
That's okay.
But make sure you're building in breaks and snacks, because there's a lot of research that shows those breaks and those snacks help the kids stay focused and have energy. And so we just threw in some examples of things that could be doing. And I like the teenager on her tablet, because that's what their break a lot of times is going to look like. Maybe not so much as the basketball, but we will have both. So it's what makes them feel good and regenerate. So this Heidi Priest, who is special ed teacher in Spanish work, she is on our board. And these are some suggestions that she gave to her students about working online. And so she said, when in doubt, ask for help, and to go to the teacher first, and to learn how to ask and explain what your problem is through whatever communication channel you use, whether it's email, whether it is going through Canvas or whatever the school is using. And then to seek out free resources and to look online, but also to contact the schools, because the schools sometimes have resources they can tell students and parents about. To look for the great accessibility extensions that are on web browsers like Google and Apple, and to not give up. We can all do hard things. And we have listed links to some of these things also in the resource page. And you can also find them in the technology section of the Learning Disabilities Association of Utah website, and also her information is being posted on our blog.
Thank you so much, Deanne. And I just really love a lot of those examples that Deanne shared, because they can also be met in a classroom setting, but also in a virtual setting. All those are great accommodations that can be necessary for our children in order to succeed in their education and social and emotional well-being in their educational process. So prioritize as a parent. You can't do it all. You're doing a great job. Remember that the important thing right now is to maybe pick one thing that you can do and put your all in that. And if that is even just hugging your kids for the day, you know what? You do what's right and what's best for your emotional well-being as well, so that you can be the good parent that I know, and Deanne also knows that you can be. Encourage out of the box. It's okay if your child needs, feels like that quiet space to do their homework for that day just isn't going to cut it. It's okay to have a little bit of flexibility and realize, okay, well, let's find out what is out of the box for you in this virtual setting, and talk to your teams. Help them help you. You are team members together for a reason. And if something isn't happening, or you're not seeing your child succeed like you know that they can, and they're regressing, don't wait. Communicate. If you're not getting anywhere with the teacher and you're not getting a response, use that chain of command and talk to the next person, talk to that principal, and those of you who have, the next step would be your LE, your district. And if you're with a charter school, you definitely don't have that district, you have that principal, and then you have the State Board of Education. There are ways to communicate though, and we would love to help support you through that. Deanne has those skills. Parent consultants at the Parent Center have those skills to help you be the best communicator with your teams and, for your student. Not just the team, like you've got a student on a Section 504, you have a student who's just struggling, who didn't struggle before. What are the steps that need to take place in order to help get the supports that are necessary for your student? Um, Watch for signs that your child may be overwhelmed or that you're overwhelmed, and those signs, don't ignore them. Let's find out how we can help you and support you, and individualize a plan where needed. Very necessary. Something that may have worked before may not be working in that virtual setting. That's okay, but let's have a conversation about how it can look. Of course, communicate, communicate, communicate. It really comes down to that. I tell my kids all the time, don't ever assume. When you assume something, that may just be your perspective. So we need to be sure that we have the skills to be able to talk to people and be able to talk to our kids, and our kids to be able to talk to their teachers and their peers. I really believe that 90% of some of the challenges are just not communicating or being able to express really what we want to say. And as a parent, when as a parent consultant, it's easy for me to communicate to teams and to families and parents, but when it comes to my own child, I can tend to get a little emotional. Just talk to my school principal, he'll tell you. But that's okay. I'm human, I'm a mom, and that's my purpose. And I'm just so grateful to have all of you here today and to be able to speak to you. We've got some really great resources, so please take the time to go to them. We kind of prioritized it and kind of flowed it how the presentation went itself. So take some time to do that. If there's something on there or something missing that you need addressed, call us. Call the Parent Center, call LDAU, and let us help support you. We're a community. We need to support each other.
Thank you so much, Ashlie and Deanne. That was fantastic and so timely. I also have a 17-year-old who is experiencing great stress and anxiety because of how unusual this year is. So those tips for working with your team, communicating, helping our kids work through these difficult emotions were just fantastic. So thank you so very much.